everyone, today we're back with actually the first video of the podcast style way of the weekly voice calls we're doing now. So to begin with, we're doing a hop v drop and a sell v hold video. So we'll just dive right into it. So to begin with, we're going to go over what gives an item resale or what makes an item resell. The main factors are the stock, demand, the hype, and kind of the history of the item. So we'll break down each factor and then talk about how they kind of work together. Stock's pretty self-explanatory. If the stock of an item is extremely high, then anyone that wants to buy the shoe is going to be able to get it, meaning there'll be no resale. So for example, the reason a common general release, say white Air Force One, doesn't resell isn't because the demand isn't there, because it's an extremely popular shoe, but it's obviously because the stock is higher than the demand. So there's never going to be a room for one, for it to sell out, and two, for there to be a resale. So now we'll move on to the demand. So if a shoe's in high demand, obviously the price is going to increase, as seen in the graph on the top right. As the more people that want the shoe, if they can't get it, obviously that's going to cause the price to increase. Now let's talk about the third factor. So the hype of an item is going to affect its resale price. For example, if a shoe is extremely hyped, that's going to suggest to us that the demand is going to be increased after release, subsequently causing the price to go up. But hype can also be misleading in the resale scene. For example, before a Supreme or Palace drop, as I find this is where it's most common, everyone will be selecting the item of the week they think is going to resell, and often everyone jumps on the same item. So then you have a massive group of resellers all buying the exact same item to resell and ignoring other items. When this happens, that one item is going to be really saturated, often causing there to be no resale on the item. So it is really important to kind of see, is this a bubble with the hype and it's just in the resale community, or if in the wider community there is actually hype around the item. So you can determine this by viewing Instagram, more mainstream social medias, to see if it really is popular or if it is a bubble within the resale community. And influence, if a massive influencer promotes the product or wears the product after release, that's going to cause the price to go up, obviously, because their fans and followers are going to then enjoy the item and want to buy it depending on their promotion. So now the fourth factor, the history and the story. So we're more talking here about classic iconic silhouettes of a shoe. So a Jordan 1, for example, Jordan 1 High is a very classic historic shoe, and because of this it has following almost. And that's going to mean there's demand for the shoe no matter what, compared to, say, an Air Max 97, where there might still be history and following to the shoe, but compared to the Jordan brand and the Jordan 1, it doesn't quite compare. So if we go on to the next slide quickly, we can see a few kind of shoes here which have pretty big followings behind them. So for example, at the moment, the Jordan 1 is doing extremely well. The Jordan 1 Mid over the past year has been taking a massive comeback in terms of resale. The Dunk, that's definitely in a new wave. And then we can look at the other side on the Yeezy and Adidas. The 350 has been dropping off over the past year, with resale not being particularly well. But whereas the Yeezy 700 Sun, this did quite well because, one, the colourway is a bit stand out, but mainly because the stock was incredibly low and the retail was dipped. So another factor we missed out a bit there is the retail of an item. If an item has a low retail, this leaves way more room for resale to be created, as if the retail is too high to begin with, even if the demand is there and the supply is low, there's going to be no resale regardless because the retail of the product is too high. So now if we just have a quick look at the graphs, if you picture before release, is the demand of this shoe high and what is the supply, and you sub it into these two graphs, you'll be able to pretty easily figure out if the shoe's going to resell or not. And then to test this theory, you can go onto StockX, look at the shoe, see what are the pre-release sales looking at. The pre-release sales are always going to be inflated compared to after release. So when you're looking at pre-release sales, look at the amount of sales. If there's 1 or 2 sales, you're not going to be able to get an accurate representation of the price off that. But say, day before release, there's a few hundred sales now, and you can kind of see the trend of the price. Then from there, you could make an accurate estimate.
Okay, so here we have a little breakdown of the Chicago Dunk hold versus sell. So you can see the release date here. So the colorway had a couple of pros. It was kind of right at the very start of the Dunk hype, just as everything was kind of starting to peak. Clearly, the Chicago is a really, really classic colorway, especially for Jordans. If you look back, it's got a strong following. And like I said, hype for Dunks was really, really high at that point. A couple of cons to be considered. There was a lot of saturation in the Dunk market in 2020. A lot of people will say it's the year of the Dunk. And there was also a staggered US release. So just as the EU price started to climb, the US didn't necessarily brick it, but they definitely knocked the price down a little bit. So here we can see on the StockX graph, pre-sale was looking at £898 to £546. So that's really strong pre-sale. And there was also quite a good quantity of sales. This wasn't just 1 or 2. Okay, so we can see on drop day that it was £474. Now, a lot of the time, it's good to just realize your profit. Don't be silly. Don't hold past it. Get your profit and move on. Because as you can see here, a month on, you've lost £70 worth of profit. That's pre-StockX fees. And then by the end of the year, it's down to 364. So you've lost nearly £100 or over £100 in profit, which is quite, it's the opposite of what you want when you're holding, evidently. You're holding for a better profit. And if you just lost £100, then quick selling was really the move on this shoe. Okay, so we've got the Band Mid GS here, a really popular shoe at the moment. So a couple of pros. So it's the GS Mid hype. GS Mids are getting a lot of hype at the moment. It's kind of the shoe of the moment. Classic colorway again. It's the band colorway. A big following and a lot of fans. Easy to wear colorway. You can slap it on with jeans, cargos. It's not too out there. So cons. So high stock numbers. There's a lot of these pairs out here. Every time you see a restock on Mesh, you've seen people hit 50, 60 pairs. There's people out there holding, 1,000, 1,500 pairs plus. And this is one of the reasons why I don't think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a really slow hold. And I mean, that's even if it does go up. A lot of the kind of money that people have made off holds in the past is because a lot of pairs went straight on foot or people were keeping for private collections.
Yeah.
Whereas this kind of been the first shoe where a lot of people have said, actually, we've seen that people are making a lot of money on holds. We'll do this as well. But the problem is that I think too many people have bought into a single shoe. So come 6 months, even a year, there's still going to be a lot of fresh pairs on the market. So I just think the stock's going to be way too high. So you can see here the retail 70 drop there. You're looking at about 112 on StockX. Just a month later, it's basically at retail. And clearly you can see a month after drop, which would have been start December, we're now 2 months-ish on from there, and it's not moved. So the prices. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say on that, the point you were talking about earlier with a hold and if people are wearing the shoe or not. Some of the best holds in recent memory that I can think of have initially been a shoe that people have not thought to hold, and then because they're not holding it, it's actually a relatively easy shoe for people who are looking to pay resale can actually afford. So they buy it, and then that increases the hype. A lot of people are wearing it on Instagram. Then that increases the demand of the shoe, and then that's why it becomes a good hold. A hold isn't always initially seen from day one, where people say, this is going to be a good shoe, hold it. Sometimes you need to assess if it's going to be a good hold or not a few months down the line, after you've seen, are people enjoying the shoe, is demand building up, is traction building up, and if everyone jumps in to hold the shoe on day one, you're never going to allow that to happen, which I think is happening here, which then is going to mean the hold is either very slow or never happens. So that is just something to look out for.
For sure. I think people have definitely kind of just forced the hold on this. Right from the get-go, people were saying it's going to be a great hold shoe, it's going to be, and there was no real evidence to kind of back this up. Past shoes, people have, received them well, and then people have started to buy pairs. People just bought pairs up right from the get-go on these. So I think, like you say, it's going to be a slow rise.
Yeah.
And finally, we've got the digital pinks. So these are a perfect example of a hold, really. Release date, you can see up here, sort of mid-2020. So the Pro, it's a woman's mid. It's a money shoe. It's a unique colorway. If you look on the Jordan market, there's not really too many shoes in that similar colorway. And then especially recently, there's a really strong market for it. TikTok models, kind of the Instagirl takeover. There's a lot of demand for this shoe. Cons, I mean, there isn't really too many. So the retail is 105. It's fairly low. I believe it was fairly GR at the start. So it wasn't kind of your quick strike dunk or anything. But you can see on drop days straight away you've got a nice profit there. And a month on, 255. And you can see by the end of the year you're hitting sales of 450 and clearly more privately. This is a really, really good hold. And it's one of those shoes that's just, it's just going to go up.
And as we were talking about a minute ago with, this is a shoe where when it released, everyone was not immediately thinking that's, everyone buy this shoe, and two, everyone that's hold this shoe. And because of that, it allowed a lot of traction early on, which then leads on to a good hold in the future. So when you're thinking about a hold, you almost have to an extent, not do what other people are doing. Obviously, take it with a pinch of salt, because if you go and hold some shoes, it's obviously going to be, you're going to make a loss. But if you dive into a hold that everyone's holding, you're never going to allow the shoe to build traction, which then is going to lead to the best holds out there.
For sure, I think it's kind of the key takeaway point with the hold is it needs to be organic growth. It needs to be organic desire for the shoe. You can't force people to want a shoe just because you've got a lot in storage. You can't force people to buy, and you can't force sales. So if the desire isn't there for the shoe from the get-go, a month later, 6 months later, a year later, if you spring up with 2,000 DS pairs of the shoe, it's still not going to be there.
And on that, we actually missed a key point from the cop or not, and that is the wearability. So if the shoe has hype and you think it's going to resell, but it is a disgusting colorway, and the general consumer is not going to be able to wear it, to me that's always a red flag, and I tend to avoid anything that is not going to be easy to piece into an outfit, because without that it's going to be very hard for it to build traction, which then is going to affect the resale even if beforehand it has hype.
It's also important to consider your market as well. Just at the end of this, the Fear of God, if you look at the Fear of God shoes, they do really well in the US, or they at least used to. Fear of God shoes have never done particularly well in the UK. It's just a different market. Same with like Jordan 6s and stuff. They're just completely different markets. So just because people are holding stuff in, say, the US and it's doing really well, it doesn't necessarily direct across to the EU.
Yeah, that is definitely a key thing. There's a lot of Jordans that do very well in the US with a hold or on release day, where in the EU it's a complete shoe that everyone will avoid. So you do have to bear in mind the local climate. Okay, thank you to all the members watching. This video is to be read along with the first guide in the server. If you come across this and you're not a member and you're from you're viewing this on YouTube or another platform, we're going to leave a few free trial keys in the description, so if they're still there while you're watching, we'll see you on the server too. That's all from us today, and we'll see you next week with another video.